It's a rainy 20th of August and I'm here in Moyne Abbey. It's one of the larger abbeys that used to be here in Mayo. It has a very nice cloister in here, as people can see. Very beautiful. And the main nave of the church, very beautiful. Obviously long destroyed, along with many other abbeys, but you can see here what it used to be. And I'll just bring you in here. There's some places I actually like this abbey a lot. You can come here, you can pray. There's usually never anybody here, where it's quite a labyrinth of rooms and so forth. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this was, would have been two-story, one of the two-story rooms. You can see the fireplace, and there was a roof here, so there was obviously stables or something here below, and maybe sleeping quarters up there. And just back in here, and you can go in here to the refectory. You can see the oven that they would use to cook and where they would have eaten. So it's a rainy day, typical Irish August. And I suppose one of the reflections I had today, I was listening to a priest it's on Immaculata Productions, a priest called Brendan Kilcoyne from Athenry. You can find it on YouTube, and he had some excellent podcasts about the situation of the faith in Ireland, and he was talking about lay leadership and how men and women laity into the church today were called to be leaders of the faith. And really excellent talk. I'll post a link later. But I suppose the reflection I had today was, you can have as much lay leadership as you like in the church, and you can have as many people that really adore and love the Eucharist. But leadership can never be replaced. We can't replace who are supposed to be the leaders of the faith, who have studied it for many years, who have consecrated their lives to the faith, and who have been ordained to give us the Eucharist. And we can push and we can pray as much as possible, but the reforms that are needed in the church, they really come from the clergy, from bishops and from priests. And I'm not looking for us to return. I'd love if we return to traditional Latin Mass, but I'm not so naive to think that something like that can be done overnight. And if it were to be done, it would need to be managed. Change has to be managed delicately, which it wasn't done after Vatican II, sadly. You do small. The way proper change is done is with consultation. It's done slowly, and you measure the effects of it, and then you roll it out. So what could have been done, I don't think what could have been done after Vatican II was to allow one or two countries implement the Novus Ordo, and to see how for example, America, let America have the Novus Ordo, and let the rest of the world have traditional, and see what would be the results after a few years. That's what happens all over the world and all over corporations. You don't do complete changes overnight. You do testing, beta testing. You go through it, and then you roll it out. I think this is a very bad analogy, because of course the Sacred Mass is not like a program that you're going to roll out, but change was overwhelming in the last 50 years, and it still is. So what I'm basically saying is the leadership we need at the moment in the church has to come from our bishops and our priests. It can't come from the laity, because as much as we would like to change things, the power to do that sits with bishops and the laity, the Pope, bishops and the laity, and the Pope, bishops and priests. The laity will support what comes, but the biggest challenge that we will face, the biggest challenge in the church today is the loss of faith in the Eucharist. And the Eucharist and the Mass, they go hand in hand. And you could nearly see it coupled. When you've lost the Eucharist, you've lost the Rosary. I rarely see a person who has no faith in the Eucharist and is praying the Rosary every day. They usually don't go hand in hand. So you've lost that faith in the Eucharist. You've lost that faith in the Rosary, and you've really lost the whole spiritual battle tools to for us to survive as Catholics. And the only way that we can renew the faith is the Eucharist. It can't be done any other way. There's simply no other formula to renewing the faith. You can have as many guitars and choirs and committees and diocesan synods, and you can do so much activism in the church, but unless the Eucharist isn't central and lived and understood, and we don't teach our kids the Eucharist correctly, the faith will never renew. The worst thing us Irish did was to take the teaching of the faith and put it into schools that are no longer Catholic in practice. The faith needs to be taught in a faith community. And the school, sadly, isn't a faith community anymore. We've ring-fenced it around as a subject in the school. And kids see it as a subject on the level of maths and English. And they come home and they do their homework and religion. And then they park it. It's not lived, and it'll never be lived. And if bishops and priests don't see the problems in how we are forming the faith in our communities, they will never understand the way forward in Ireland, and the faith will be lost. People say to me, Robert, don't be so pessimistic. The faith won't be lost, and it'll come back, and don't worry. I think people are being a bit naive here. I mean, the church will be triumphant. Christ will never abandon us, abandon the church. The church will grow, and it will always be there. But there is no promise from our Lord to say that the Catholic faith in Ireland will survive. And our Lord could let the Catholic faith completely die out, in essence, in Ireland. I don't think it will, but we could end up with 30, 40 churches in Ireland and 30, 40 priests. It could happen. We have one priest ordained this year so far, and I don't think there's talk of ordaining any more. One priest. And I think we've ordained, as far as I'm aware, 3 bishops, an apostolic nuncio and 2 others. 3 or 4 bishops have been ordained this year. So, that is a scary ratio, to be ordaining more bishops than priests. If you're only ordaining one priest and the Eucharist comes from the priesthood, then we've failed to capture the truth of the Eucharist in our communities. And I can say I'm a father, I have kids, and it's been a struggle. It's been a real struggle because, I've seen my kids being brought up in your normal Catholic school, and it's been a real struggle. And I've reached out to traditionalist groups like the Society of St. Pius X, just to see how do they form the faith. You can criticize Lefebvre and all these traditionalist groups for what they've done or, the actions they've taken, but they have a radically different way of forming the faith, and they have a very, very vibrant faith community. They do. It's a very different experience. you're going to these. If you ever go to a traditional mass in Ireland, in the many groups that you have, you've got Institute of Christ the King, Fraternity of the Society of St. Pius X, and then you might go to a traditional monastery or something like that. You'll always see the families coming with their missals, because this is a commitment, this is something, and we're always traveling, long distances to go to our traditional Latin Mass. That's what's happening. So you see a totally different way of living the faith in community. In our 1,200, the canonical parishes around Ireland, in our diocese, and the 1,200 odd parishes around Ireland, how many people bring a missal to Mass? And follow the Mass in the missal, as we used to do it. My mother had a traditional Latin Mass missal, which she used to use in the 60s. How many of us do that today? Nobody does it. We might have a little handout at the Mass with the readings, but practically nobody has the missal. And whereas in Latin Masses around Ireland, a lot of families are coming with their missal and reading and following the Mass in the missal. And you see that commitment of those families. So, we can talk. I think it's admirable that we have a priest, asking the laity to, to stand up and be leaders of the faith. But we also need support from those who have given their lives to the faith exclusively. We need support from them. And when we reach out for support, it's often very difficult to get it, especially if you're looking for something that is not standard in Ireland. Like perpetual adoration in Knock. We have 1,200 parishes in Ireland. We could have a perpetual adoration, a truly perpetual adoration chapel in Knock, to pray for vocations, to foster vocations, and to foster a community of adoration in Ireland. Imagine a perpetual adoration chapel in Knock with some small community setting beside it, so that your parish is assigned a day or a half day of adoration. You go to Knock and you have a small community area where you can have tea and meet other people, and you have that interaction with other faithful. Too often our chapels can be someplace that is ring fenced to Mass and doesn't have the community aspect around it, that you're after Mass, you're meeting people, you're sitting down, a centre with a community area where you can have tea, coffee and chat and stay and talk and meet. That's what they do in many traditional chapels. I've been to several in United States, Fraternity of St. Peter, SSPX. They do have a community setting after Mass, tea, coffee. And we should be able to do that. We have to form this in Knock, to make Knock as a Eucharistic shrine, have the Eucharistic Adoration Chapel there, and from there start to bring our parishes together as communities. And it will take time. We need families to grow as communities and put the faith back in the centre of our families. Otherwise, we won't have the faith in the future. To be Catholic requires commitment. And I think Father Brendan, he made he spoke about Thomas More and his fight towards the end of his life, because at some stage you have to hold your hands up and stick to your Catholic faith, and too many Catholics don't do that anymore, and too many bishops don't even ask us to do that. Catholics, so-called Catholics who've passed abortion legislation in Ireland, are being given communion by our bishops. In effect, the message our bishops are saying is, you can be a Catholic and vote for abortion. You can be a Catholic and legislate for abortion. How far have we let our Catholic faith be degraded to such an extent that we now facilitate Catholics to think it's okay to be pro-choice and to legislate for abortion and vote for abortion? That destroys lives at so many levels. Either we have a Catholic faith or we don't have a Catholic faith. Either we have a catechism of the Catholic Church, which teaches us something and which we should stand for, or we don't. And today in Ireland, we have, like never before, the most confused time in our faith. You know, it's great that this priest is voicing it, but you know, at the end of the day, you have to put your stake in the ground as bishops and priests and say, where do we go with this? You know, what do we say is the Catholic teaching? What do we say isn't? You know, Christ talks about hell. We don't like to talk about hell. We don't like to think that our soul can be lost. But, you know, last I checked in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, you know, you can lose your soul. You know, you can go to hell. You know, sin is a reality. You know, being separate, being, you know, living your life apart from Christ is a path that you can take. And, you know, Christ gave us free will for a reason. And sometimes that means making choices that don't lead us to Christ. So it's a pity, really, that in the sense that, you know, Catholic laity, like me and many others that are asking for clarity around things, bishops and some priests will turn around and, you know, say, well, that's your opinion, but I'm going to do something else. And we're a broad church. I've heard this a few times. We're a broad church, and we can encompass a multitude of opinions. And what's a sin today, tomorrow maybe church teaching could be changed. And they live on the expectation that someday we will change church teaching on a particular thing that today we find problematic, like, you know, entering into second marriage, or you know, abortion, contraception, and so forth. You know, where are we going as a church? You know, because, you know, confusion isn't helping. You know, you see an institution now so confused with itself that, you know, men won't even bother giving their lives exclusively to the faith. And that's sadly what has happened. So I suppose, you know, I don't think we can take for granted that the faith will always be in Ireland, because Christ didn't say that the country of Ireland will always have the Catholic faith, or unless there's some saint or Irish saint or mystic that you know has said that it will be here. I don't think there was any promise in the Bible or from Christ to say that we will always have the faith in Ireland. You know, it's up to us. Christ gave us free will to accept him or reject him. And we can just look around Ireland. Every indicator in the Catholic faith in Ireland, every indicator is in the wrong direction. And we're not engaging anybody. We're not engaging children. You know, my son has been to your regular diocesan Catholic formation, and he's been to the Society of St. Pius X, and it's two different worlds, two different ways of teaching the faith and of living the faith. And say what you say about Lefebvre, but if you sit down and read what the Society of St. Pius X does, you know, it's pretty much what we did 50 years ago in Ireland. And we did have faith in Ireland. And most of the bishops and priests that are alive today really have their faith rooted in that time and how they were brought up in that time, and our parents. You know, our parents weren't bad Catholics. Our grandparents, I remember my grandparents, and, you know, they weren't bad Catholics. The priests, you know, of 50, 60 years ago really weren't, you know, there was some bad apples there, but the majority were good, honest men. You know, there was structural problems, there was issues, we know that, but, you know, most of them were pretty decent people, good Catholics. And we threw that all out, and we made it, you know, a church of you know, I don't know, of nice, of, you know, accommodation and comfortable, and, you know, watered down, and you know, kids are not engaged in this. It would be very hard to, because parents are not engaged. We don't teach our children the faith in the community. We don't take up the banner to do this, to really push behind it. And we expect priests and bishops to do it, and that's really wrong. But priests and bishops also need to support us in making these changes, So, I mean, leadership is a partnership in a way, because a leader, if you want to make changes across the board, you need to do them, in cooperation with every level, and you need to trial and do them out. But the Eucharist is central to our faith, and the way that we're teaching it and understanding the Eucharist today is not working. It's not. We've converted the Eucharist to in effect, a potato chip you hand out as you go out the door. I've heard rumors that some priests are going to mail the Eucharist to parishioners who can't come to Mass. Mail it. Put it in the mail, in the letterbox. And I've heard different things about people putting the Eucharist in a little sphinx so that they can receive it reverently. And, it's horrific, guys. And Mass attendance is absolutely being obliterated. Even though there is many spaces for me, people are not going to Mass. And the people that should go to Mass, the young, people with young families that are really not impacted by this virus, children and teenagers and young adults are really not impacted. They're not going to Mass. They don't care about the faith. They haven't internalized it, and they don't understand it. And they have their lives wrapped around the materialist things that keeps them distracted day to day. And they think that will make them happy forever. So I suppose a bit of a long rant here. A big thank you to priests that do care about the faith and that have reached out, and I suppose I'd like to, we have to work and we have to be passionate and love the faith. But this crisis in Ireland is really of our own making. We can say what we say. We can, because we don't want to offend anyone anymore. We're not able to really preach what the gospel says, because Christ wasn't accommodating to everyone he met. At some stage, he had to say what the truth was, and some people found it a hard truth to listen to. When he spoke about the Eucharist, many of them didn't understand and said, this is a hard teaching. And then many of them probably in that moment didn't understand it. But he wasn't there to make everyone happy and comfortable in their own lives. He was there to show them the way, the truth, and the life which Christ is. Really, once you discover that, that will transform our life. So we need to now take stock of what's happened in Ireland. The laity, lots of men I know have very clear that the problems here, are very dire. And if we continue to do what we're doing, there won't be anything left. We will close 600 chapels and parishes over the next 30 years, the way we're going, simply because we won't have the money to keep them running, never mind the priests. And this talk about lay-led liturgies is heretical destruction of the faith. The liturgy is never led by the laity. It's always by the priest. Otherwise, you destroy the importance of the sacrifice of the Mass, which is the center of our faith. The Eucharist is source, so much in center of our faith. And the Eucharist, the mystery of the Eucharist, the mystery of the faith is found in the Mass, can never be replaced by the laity. And it should never be replaced by any talk of married priests or anything like that, because it has to be something that's truly committed to. That's what Christ always intended us to do, to leave everything to follow him. So look, people have commented on the videos I've put on YouTube on the faith, and maybe let me know what you think. I share this with I'm passionate about the faith, and I'd like to really see if there's other laity around Ireland and priests that we could really band together to try and in this moment in crisis renew the faith as much as possible, especially in our children, to teach the faith with witness, and to bring the faith into our communities, into activities in our communities. Religious education needs to be removed from every school in Ireland. Every school, across the board. Religion needs to be removed. I know Atheists Ireland are asking for this, but I actually stand with Atheists Ireland on this, because we have no religious or priests left teaching religion in most of our schools. They are gone. Those days are gone. And there's no point trying to feign a past where religion, was taught in our school. Those days are gone, guys. We have to stop treating religion and the Catholic faith as a subject in our schools. Ring fence to 40 minutes. That's wrong. Religion needs to come back into our communities. We need to organise activities in our communities, in families, to teach and talk about the faith among ourselves and with our children, and to transmit the faith in that environment, not in the school. Religion needs to be taken out of the school immediately, in my opinion. The curriculum we have for religious education in our schools is appalling. It's so bad. I can't even go on about it any more than that, what it is. And you can say there are many good Catholic religious teachers in school. Good, bring them into our community. If we need to chip in to help and pay for it, we'll do that. But we shouldn't have religion sitting alongside maths, because the days when maths and religion were taught by priests and sisters and brothers, those days are gone. And we've replaced them with people that really, many of them don't understand or live the faith fully. They're ticking a box to get a job in a school, to get paid. We need to take religion back and to teach it as something that is, from the heart. We're not being paid to teach it. We're passing on a faith that we received. It needs to come out of schools immediately. And I encourage any parents out there who have kids in school, and if you're a parent that loves the faith, tell the school that your child is not going to have religious instruction in the school. Take them out of religion classes in Catholic schools in Ireland. Immediately. Teach them the faith yourself. Band together with other families and teach them the faith yourself. Or, for example, go to a traditional group, Society of St. Pius X, Institute of Christ the King, and get an understanding of how they transmitted the faith and how the practicalities around teaching the faith. Boys, get your boys as altar boys. Let them experience the faith. This is how many vocations were fostered. The Society of St. Pius X in Athlone and in Dublin, they will have at a sung mass, or high mass, they will have 7 to 9 altar boys. It's natural to want to be around the sacred, to understand the sacred. So I suppose we need to make changes that need to happen now, otherwise the faith will be gone. And there's no point in continuing down the road that we've gone, which has destroyed the faith. Otherwise, we're going to end up with an empty church like this abbey. It'll be destroyed. We'll destroy the faith in Ireland because people will not engage with what we're doing. It's like the Irish language. I appreciate the Irish language, but I don't speak it. It was never spoken to me at home. And in schools, it was taught as, you're rhyming off declensions, you're memorizing words, but it was never interiorized or never loved. And today, in effect, the Irish language is practically dead in Ireland. I rarely, if ever, hear it spoken as a living language. Rarely. Whereas if you look around Ireland at Polish families, often on the street you'll hear Polish spoken. They want to pass on the language. They want their kids to know Polish, and they've made the conscious decision to learn the language. Well, we've done the same thing to the Catholic faith. We have reduced it to something academic for our children that they really don't understand. Our First Communion days are a show. Our confirmations are a show. It's not about the sacrament anymore. They don't understand the sacraments. And they don't avail of confession. They don't understand the basics of our faith anymore. That's what has happened. And we have let it happen. And unless Catholics in Ireland wake up, we pull our kids from religion classes in schools. We teach them the faith ourselves with other men and women. We band together with priests that want to support us and that want to passionately teach the faith. Unless we do that, the faith is gone. There's no other way of saying about it. There's no other path that we can take here. The path that we have taken so far, it has destroyed the faith. And, you can say the crisis in the church is of our own making, really. And, I think the Archbishop of Dublin has understand this, because I think he's trying to do the same, to remove religious instruction from schools. But, it's too late to just do it in one day. This has to be pulled across the board. And our priests and our bishops need to enter with us in communities, and we need to renew the faith in a community. Ecclesia, church, is us, is our community. It's not a building, never was. Christ didn't build any physical building. He left us a church, and that church that was there when he ascended into heaven, that church it has been passed on to us, that the teaching of that church has been passed on to us, and we have to pass that on to future generations fully and intact, and with conviction and zeal and love and an understanding of the transcendent supernatural power of the Eucharist. We're not doing that, guys. We're not being done in Ireland, and many of us are too afraid to talk about it, or even, and many priests don't want to talk about it. They're waiting for X, Y, and Z bishop to die or to move on or to retire, and they're hoping that a new bishop will come in and things will be transformed and it'll be different and we'll be able to get changes through. No, it's too late, guys. It needs to happen now, and you need to take action now. Don't be waiting for bishops to change, because then you've no idea that the next bishop will be any better than the previous one. And it needs to happen now. Anyway, long talk. Just wanted to put it out there. I think, leadership leadership takes many forms, and I'm just, I'm not saying I'm a leader in the faith. I'm just saying it's important to me, and I feel the need for these changes to happen, and we need to push for them. Anyway, God bless you all. Greetings from Moyne Abbey on the wet August, 20th of August. Tomorrow's the 21st of August, and it's we remember the apparition of Knock tomorrow, which was, our St. Joseph, Our Lady, St. John with the Book of Revelations and the Lamb on the cross. So let's pray and keep the faith. Thanks.